We got, I'll give you, 3 seconds.
There we go.
Okay. We got, I'll give you, 3 seconds.
Okay, hey everyone, and welcome to a very special edition of Return of the Living Geeks. And as always, I am joined by my amazing co-host, Andre.
What's up?
But hold up, we got somebody else joining us today, and we have Ace Vaughn Johnson from LA Guns in the house with us tonight. And we actually are doing this for a really good cause, which is Stand Up for Pits, which is a nonprofit organization that through events and education helps pit bulls. And we have a GoFundMe link set up, and we encourage everybody to donate to that. So before we kind of kick everything off, Ace, I just wanted to ask, why is this particular charity like near and dear to you?
Hey, well, first of all, thanks for having me, guys. And
Yeah.
as a dog owner and rescue advocate and a longtime sort of champion of pit bull type dogs, it's just something that's become kind of near and dear to my heart, where I have two. I'm sure you can see there's one to my right and one to my left, maybe. And they're both rescues, and they both, one came from a kill shelter, and one came in off the streets and was picked up here in Tennessee by a local rescue. Although he never actually entered the rescue, he went straight to a vet and then right into my care as a foster home. But there's this sort of stigma about these types of dogs, and along with that comes the fact that they're overbred, and the shelters here in America are just overflowing with them. And it's very unfortunate, because the vast majority of them, in reality, they're leaving in a trash bag. And so, I hate to be so callous about it, but that's just the truth. And so I've just tried to use what little, iota of a platform I have from my career in the music industry to sort of raise awareness or draw attention to that. And it's just something I'm passionate about. And I've gotten to know Rebecca Corey, the founder of Stand Up for Pits. She's just a wonderful human being and a very funny writer and comic and actress, and successful in her own right. But she does these events all across America, and she'll have comics from, people like Patton Oswalt and Mo Collins and all these wonderful, actors and actresses and comics and people and such, and to generate funds for the things that she does, which, includes she has a thing called Angel Day, where she does spay and neuter clinics all over America. And they pay for that. And so it's basically just an open call. If you have a dog that you can't afford to have spayed or neutered, they take care of that. And they'll fund, animal dogs in need and medical procedures and all kinds of wonderful things. And so there are so many great organizations out there, not just for pit bulls and dogs as well. But, I always tell people, if you're a cat person, or you're a raccoon person, or you're a Lhasa Apso person, or a Chihuahua or whatever, there is a rescue organization, maybe not down the street, but somewhere, that would love to have your voice, or whether you're, an actor or you work at Walmart, it's just somebody else to generate interest in these groups. And I'm happy to sort of focus my attention on a lot of these groups, such as Stand Up for Pits. And so when you had asked me about picking maybe a rescue to focus on here today, I immediately went with Rebecca and Stand Up for Pits.
Nice. Well, yeah, it's a really great organization. I did a huge deep dive on them, and some of the really amazing stuff that they do. So we're really happy to, not only have a really fun conversation with you, but like raise some money and
Yeah.
raise awareness. So yeah.
Yeah. And like I will say that pit bulls are still, I think, a little bit stigmatized, especially in the public eye. Like they're still kind of seen as the quote unquote like trained attack dog or like defensive dog, but
Yeah.
it's really it comes out of mistreatment.
Yeah, exactly. And it's interesting if you go back, 50, 60, 70, 80 years, we as an American society especially have always sort of vilified a different throughout time breeds of dogs. One of the most decorated dogs in American history was a pit bull type dog, Sergeant Stubbs. I think they just made an animated movie about him, but that was, I can't remember if it was World War I or World War II. And pit bull type dogs used to be sort of this American symbol of strength. And like you had like the RCA Victor dog, which was technically a pit bull type, Petey on the Little Rascals and stuff. And that was sort of before that stigma kind of shifted. And then, for a while it was like Rottweilers. And I guess apparently in the 40s, it was German Shepherds because they were German. So
aggressive sounding.
I just think around the 90s, culturally, there were some things going on where pit bulls became, like you'd see like the drug dealer with like the spiked collar one, and they just became this sort of thing that, when I was younger, the animal shelters, at least that I had visited with my mom and whatnot, were not teeming with pit bulls. This has been something that's sort of gone on, at least what I've seen over the last maybe 30 years, if not less. And now when you walk into a shelter, I don't know the exact specific percentages and whatnot, but if you were to walk into the average shelter, all the medium and large size dogs predominantly will be pit bull type dogs. And of course, like any domesticated pet or any animal, there's always, there are, even if you look at the like sort of bite statistics or anything like that, one of the reasons that they may be slightly extrapolated then compared to other types of dogs is that pit bull isn't a breed, it's a type. So you've got American Pit Bull Terrier, an English Pit Bull Terrier, a Staffordshire Terrier, or in Rufus's instance, a mutt who's just got a boxy head. And so with the numbers, it's like saying, well, why are there more? I'm trying to not use Texas for any sort of analogy right now, but why are there more of X in Texas than there are in Maine? Well, it's a bigger landmass, more people. Just the same way there are more pit bull type dogs than there are Lhasa in America or Dalmatians, because there are more of them. So the numbers are larger, but it's also a breed and it's also a type. So I'm constantly saying, it's like saying you're from Europe. You could be from France, you could be from Austria, you could be from Italy. They're all very different places, but they're all part of Europe. So you've got all these different specific breed types, at least as far as the AKC and I guess the CDC and a couple other acronyms or whatever, recognize that there are these different breeds of dogs that fall under this umbrella term of pit bull. So, and they were bred for their strength and for other qualities, and they're terrier. So they tend to be energetic. They tend to be loyal, and in the wrong hands, they can be trained or to do terrible things, or in the instance that they are frequently abused, which we, in dog rescue stuff, we see all too often. Rufus here on my right, it was an abuse case, came in covered in wounds, presumably was a what we would call a bait dog. That's people that are doing that to them, and then not all the time, but when you have an animal that lashes out, you have to dig into why did it do that. These dogs aren't just raised in a loving environment and then just decide to snap one day. It doesn't work that way. There's something that transpires, so it's unfortunate, and I could keep going, but I won't, but it's unfortunate that they have been vilified, and that, like you said, there's a stigma about them, when in reality, I've met plenty of pit bull type dogs that made it clear through body language that they weren't interested in getting to know me. But I've also met countless of these types of dogs that wanted nothing but to be loved. And when you look at whether it's bite incidents or worse or whatever it may be, versus how many of these dogs are just a loving companion in someone's home, you're talking about, several million of these dogs versus, what 1, 2, or 3. Those, to me, that's not enough of a fraction of a percentage for me to say, oh, well, these dogs must all be terrible. Otherwise, at that mindset, then everything's terrible. So again, it's sort of using my voice or whatever to draw attention to these really wonderful animals. And, I can say wholeheartedly, I wouldn't be here if I hadn't rescued Mila, who's here. I don't know if you can see her behind me to my left.
Cutie.
She's pretty much passed out. I think they both are at this point, but they've, especially her, give me a purpose and reason to wake up a lot of the time. So, and I hope to instill that in more people, and I hope more people see how wonderful these dogs are. Or like I said, if you're an avid squirrel fan or a cat or whatever, there are plenty of animals out there that could, use a home or a foster, or even just, if you can't have a pet, it's just, with Twitter and Facebook and MySpace and whatever the hell else now, it's so easy to share, and we call it networking, so every day of my life, I make sure I'm doing something to network, and people tag me or send me things all the time. And I'm constantly trying to, someone says, hey, there's this pit bull in Duluth that needs help. And I can go, okay, who do I know in that area? And, connect the dots or whatever. So, it's a little more rewarding than the whole sex, drugs, and rock and roll thing, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Clearly, behind you is 2 wild, vicious beasts,
Yeah.
And also, thank you again, because this was, it's not only just what people can donate, it's also just awareness. It's about like what they can do if they don't necessarily even have the funds. As you say, you can like share posts and
Absolutely.
Yeah. And just like you said, with dogs being, especially pit bull types, being like really attentive and loyal, and just generally sweet, it's really just another type of support. And like dogs, cats, like any sort of domesticated pet that you have is really a form of like another life that's supporting you, and then you're supporting them. And there's like different ways that they can support. So pit bulls, like you said, they're a little bit more energetic. They're not quite as boisterous or mean as people put them out to be, but they seem like a dog that can, if you have a certain bond with them, help you out in certain like dangerous situations. Like say maybe you are like walking your dog, and maybe like you fall down, like they will try to help you up, or I don't know, like support and protect you from any, like if any strange person comes around, they might, just make themselves known that they're not welcome, but like in sort of a way that's not what people think as like an attack dog. But
Yeah,
still,
it's
that love and support.
It's the type or breed or whatever is pretty relative, and anybody that has a full-size dog, I've met golden retrievers that were not friendly, and I've met poodles that were not friendly. I could keep going. I've been nipped at or bit infinitely more by small dogs than I ever have by anything over maybe 30 pounds. But they're all individual dogs. So you could get a dog, and again, like I said, these types of dogs are so eager to please. And of course, they've been domesticated over thousands and thousands of years, but especially pit bull types over the last few hundred years. One of the most desired traits that we we wanted from them was their ability to want to sort of appease us, which is what makes them such great dogs. Unfortunately, there's a percentage of people out there that use that to for the wrong reasons, if you will. But of course, you could train any dog to, someone's approaching you to act defensively or aggressively, which you probably wouldn't want. I wouldn't. I've had people look at, I used to live in Hollywood. And when I say Hollywood, I mean Hollywood proper. I mean, I lived across the street from the Capitol Records building. When I stood on my porch, I looked up and I could see the Hollywood sign. And so it was interesting all the time, to say the least. And, I would walk her around, and the people that saw us regularly were always, oh, hey, Mila, don't mind me. But if you didn't know any better, I would see people periodically who would look at us and cross the street or something. And she doesn't know. She just is like, oh, do you have, does this person have a cookie for me? So, it's a lot of it. Again, it just goes back to stigma. So, and I'm happy to lend my voice to anything pit bull related. So,
yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I mean, honestly, putting this all together, I was thinking I had been toying around with the idea of wanting to do like a fundraiser, and then I see you on Twitter how vocal you are, and it really inspired me to reach out and kind of put this in motion. So, thank you for that also.
Yeah, no, thanks for reaching out, Mike. I'm glad to be here. And anything horror movies, and I would say horror movies, pit bulls, and punk rock, I'm always
there you go. Yeah. As you can see, I don't really ever watch movies at all.
It's quite the collection. I'm impressed.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't know, it's a sickness. This isn't even half of it. It's but yeah, I'm like, we can get into this more later, but I know you have this massive, amazing horror memorabilia collection. I know you showed me a video that was a cool little tour, and just really impressive is the only word I can think of.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I've been collecting one sheets and theatrical posters for probably casually for close to 10 years, but I got really serious about it in maybe 2014 or 15, and then now I slowed down because I ran out of wall space, and I got most of my sort of holy grails that were financially manageable. I mean, I don't have anything that's worth tens of thousands of dollars like maybe Kirk Hammett does, but I have some great Universal pieces, and my House on Haunted Hill 59 French Grand, this huge, it's 5 by 4 feet, I was looking for that for forever, and a couple other things that I really, really love. So it's been a cool thing to collect, but I've sort of slowed my roll on it now that I've run out of, like I said, wall space, but I do love that.
Yeah. And I always say this about collectors. I feel like, collectors just get other collectors. They kind of I've had people come over and, they're like, oh, that's cool. But then they kind of look at you a little funny, oh, okay, it's a lot of stuff, but
it doesn't quite translate to them how big of a thing this is in your life. I think we can all say that horror is something that has changed our lives considerably.
Yeah, absolutely.
For the better.
Yeah. I mean, I've been most of my earliest memories as a young man, as a child, not a young man, as a kid, were horror movie related. I mean, you've got the Return of the Living Dead background, and I don't know how old I was when I saw that for the first time, but I was definitely single digits.
A little too
7,
young,
8, 9. What's that?
Oh, and a little too young, maybe.
Yeah, probably, but nobody was really parenting me. I was sort of left to my own devices. So it was a lot of VHS tapes and mayhem, playing out in the desert and being a kid. But yeah, I grew up with horror movies. I grew up watching them with my dad, and then I don't know if Mike, if I had told you this or not, I can't remember, but my cousin is a movie director. His name's Mark Lester. He directed Commando, Firestarter,
Oh,
Class of
wow.
War,
Yeah,
That's
Class of
awesome.
1999. And so when I was,
that movie so
I can't
much.
remember what year Class of 1999 came out, but I was on set for a lot of it,
Oh,
especially
that's awesome.
towards the end of the movie. And I was a little boy. I was probably like maybe 8. And
Wow.
so I just remember being like, you know, I want to do this. I want to be involved in this. And I like this, you know. And so, and my dad and I would go rent horror movies, and he would always throw on a black and white, you know, something from Universal or Hammer. And I would rent something, you know, concurrent at the time, you know, like Toxic Avenger or Return of the Living Dead 3 or, you know, House 2 or whatever the hell. And so that was sort of how I got really into horror. And then obviously now I'm an adult and it's carried through, even though I tell people my house looks like a sort of like the 40-year-old virgin, you know, it's like memorabilia and posters and, you know, like all kinds of nonsense, but it's what I like. So I decorated accordingly.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, it's so funny. Like when I think about like movies, like it's like I think we all kind of have like that one, like one or maybe both, like really cool parents or like a sibling or somebody that introduced us. Like I know my dad, who unfortunately passed away from cancer, but he introduced me to the original Little Shop of Horrors, the Roger
Yeah.
Corman film.
Jack Nicholson.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's kind of when I knew I really liked it. Like I knew it was weird, and like it's weird because I didn't really care that it was black and white. And then of course, like the Universal stuff, which I think is such a good primer for like young people.
Yeah.
Um, I think there's something about the monsters that sort of young people in particular can relate to.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think there's especially talking like maybe the creature from the Black Lagoon and Frankenstein's monster, where there's this sort of like outcast theme of like not being accepted. And then I think also, I can't speak for people that were watching those films when they were new, but I feel like, you know, in the last, let's say 40 years, if you were 8 years old and you're watching, you know, Son of Frankenstein or, you know, The Creature Walks Among Us, it's not by today's standards, or in the last, like I said, 30, 40 years, by today's standards, it's not really like terrifying. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I feel like it's a good sort of gateway drug, if you will, for young adults into horror, because you could put on, you know, 1931 Dracula and it's spooky and scary, but like it's not like showing a kid you know a Fulci film or something like that. There's no eyeballs being poked out or, you know, hands getting severed. It's just some guy going blah. So I think it's a good entry point. And like your story is similar to mine. Both my parents are deceased, but my dad, when I was a little boy, would show me the same thing, black and whites, and I loved that. I still am enamored. I don't know if you can see, but there's a full-size creature from the Black Lagoon.
That's awesome.
Cut out there from the some video store when they finally issued it on DVD 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And you know, so I still am a huge fan of the black and whites, if you will. It's still the classics.
Yeah, I know that and it's funny because I think I used to have a Frankenstein that was like part of that series. He was about the same size. Boy, I wish I wouldn't have gotten rid of him. It's like he was such a pain to move. Like I was moving all the time. So so you probably get this question a lot, but do you have a particular favorite horror movie, or is it kind of like, for me, it kind of changes from day to day?
Yeah, I kind of go by era, because to me, I can't compare like, you know, Cabin in the Woods to Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. You know, I sort of go like, I have to at least do a split around like the 70s. You know, so my favorite horror film of all time from, let's just say 1980 and earlier, or 70s and earlier, is probably, depending on my mood, either House on Haunted Hill or Creature from the Black Lagoon.
Nice.
After that, my go-to answer is probably Creepshow, followed by Return of the Living Dead, and then with The Shining in there somewhere, and then The Exorcist, although I don't know where to put that. But those are probably, what is that, 6 or 7 films? Those are probably my favorite horror movies across the board of all time.
Nice.
Yeah, and all those offer something pretty wildly different. The only two that are kind of similar in what themes and like the feelings and the moods that they offer that are familiar to each other would probably be Creature and House on Haunted Hill. But even then, they're not really that similar in terms of like themes and underlying subtext, if any. But it's it also shows how different horror films can be, and like what people can get out of them.
Absolutely.
Because like, I mean, I'm also a huge fan of Return of the Living Dead, as you can see. And also like one of the best like horror movie soundtracks of all time got me into the Cramps, and like I don't know what more I can say. It's just a perfect zombie like comedy horror movie, and it's referential to the original zombie movie Night of the Living Dead. So it knows where its lineage lies, and it kind of pays homage to the classics as well.
Yeah, it's sort of like the perfect 80s horror movie almost, because it's not quite a slasher, obviously, but it's graphic, but it's still humorous. And then there's that sort of what is it called? That sort of like almost meta factor, where it's like kind of playing homage to itself.
Yeah, it's like self-aware.
Yeah, exactly. Like even how the second one opens with the two actors. I can't remember their names. Tom something.
Tom Matthews.
Tom Matthews and
James Karen.
But they're two different characters, obviously, because they both expire in the first film. Just that alone, I thought was always kind of cheeky. But yeah, the soundtrack, I mean, not talking scores, but talking an actual like soundtrack, like compilation of different artists, in my opinion, same. It's the greatest horror movie soundtrack of all time. I mean, some of my favorite bands, Rocky Erickson, the Cramps, like you said, the Damned, TSOL, Tall Boys, a couple other bands, SSQ. I could just look at I've got a one sheet right here, but I think that's most of them. But yeah, so good. I actually just bought a second copy of that on vinyl, I think last week.
I gotta do that.
Yeah, love Return of the Living Dead.
And it's really interesting because like that in Creepshow, I think, I mean, Creepshow is more overtly an homage to EC, like the horror EC comics, but I feel like Return of the Living Dead could definitely be like a comic book type movie. Like it kind of has that pulpy sort of 50s, but with a modern kind of spin vibe to it.
Yeah. Like if you, I totally agree. That's a good term, pulpy. If you replaced the punks of the film and made them like greasers or something like that, it totally could have been like a 55 to 60 era.
Or even like Beatniks too.
You could have made it a little later. So give them some Andy Warhol vibe or something like that. I mean, I just thought it was clever because it just sort of threw a guy with a mohawk and these punk rock bands and all this aesthetic into the mainstream lexicon almost, because it's one of, at least what I remember as a kid and being an avid fan of punk rock, first time where I was like, there's punk rockers in a movie, and I don't mean like in the 90s or 2000s. I mean, I was 1986. So it's pretty early to see that kind of stuff in a film that wasn't a punk rock film. And then, talking about pop culture and all that, it's the first film to give us the catchphrase of brains. It's the first zombie movie where they speak. And so, growing up, I'm sure we all remember, zombies going brains, but that stems from that movie, which is pretty cool.
And there's also something so like on an existential level, like kind of messed up about how she's like, we're in constant pain, and like the only way to fix that is like
eat
brains. And I'm like,
yeah,
that is messed up on a lot of levels.
Supposed to be, I can't remember who I heard this from, but it's supposed to be an analogy for like hard drug addiction, And so I want to say, I'm probably wrong, but I feel like that came from John Russo. Maybe there was an event. I said I lived in Hollywood for a long time. I was born in Los Angeles. I lived there my whole life till 2 years ago. And there was a 20-year anniversary at the Egyptian Theater in 2006, presumably, that had all the cast and crew, everybody. And I went and sat pretty close to the dais. And I was there to see the movie on the big screen for the first time, which was great. But then getting to soak in all these, they had a Q&A that went on for 90 minutes afterwards, which of course I don't remember all of it now, but it was just fabulous. And one of the cool things I thought was neat, and the band I forgot was 45 Grave, Party Time. Dying of cancer, the singer, Enigma Records put her, and through the film, in charge of orchestrating the soundtrack. So she's the one that actually culled all those artists, which makes total sense when you think about the singer of 45 Grave going, okay, we're going to get Rock Erickson, we're going to get the Cramps, we're going to get the Damned, we're going to get the TSOL. So she pulled all these horror punk artists to sort of align herself with the film, which made total sense, because most of the time you just I don't know when that time frame started where it was like every horror movie just had Dokken or a heavy metal, or even the second film is like Leather Wolf and Anthrax and Zodiac Mindwarp, but there's no horror punk. So it was cool that it sort of stands out in that respect, that it's like the only horror movie at the time, at least, that was just like horror punk. Although Texas Chainsaw 2 had a similar vibe. I think IRS put that soundtrack out, but they had the Cramps as well, and Lords of the New Church, and also Rocky Erickson, which makes sense because it's supposed to be in Texas and he's Austin's sweetheart. But that's a whole spare you the Rocky Erickson rant.
Yeah. But and it's got the classic Oingo Boingo song, of course, and
that's what I forgot too.
Opens on
Oingo, what is it? No One Lives Forever.
Yeah.
See, great choices.
Yeah, and that's the thing about those soundtracks. Like when you give like a main artist or band or group like the power to curate not only like maybe a soundtrack that would be like, there's movies that have like songs inspired by the movie, or like the soundtrack that's actually in the film, like Chainsaw 2 or Return of the Living Dead. When you give them that power, like it really does help shape the movie and like give it that energy and give it that authenticity too. Like these are actual punk bands like lending it this feeling of authenticity, so people who are actually part of that punk scene going to see these movies, they won't just scoff at the screen like, oh, these bigwig producers just like, this isn't us, this isn't what we're like.
No, you're right. And it did definitely give those types of movies a little more authenticity than just going, oh, we're going to get some guy to write some songs or whatever. I mean, there's a bit of that in, like, what was it, Black Roses and some stuff like that, where they're like, okay, we're going to write some generic songs for the movie, and they don't have any backbone to them or whatever, because they were just thrown together for whatever purposes for the movie,
Yeah, it's like, we're gonna get Hans Zimmer to write a punk song, but he's gonna do it with Pharrell.
Aren't you excited? It would be weird.
That being said, I do kind of have a soft spot for Black Roses, but it pales in comparison definitely to another movie that I think we might talk about a little bit later, and that's Rock and Roll Nightmare.
What is the premise of Rock and Roll Nightmare? Because I've seen it, I just cannot remember anything.
It's a band called Triton, led by a guy who's named Triton,
Okay.
played by John Michael Thor.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
they go
Thor. Yeah.
Thor, yeah. They go to a farmhouse to record an album. Like apparently, like in the movie, the guy who owns it says that other rock bands have come there. Like he name drops Alice Cooper, some other like heavy metal rock bands.
Yeah.
And it's apparently supposed to be like a big moment for the band. It's really weird because like there's a house. They have no TV, no phones, but there's like power and they can like sleep and write music and rehearse. In the barn, they boast having like a 24 track setup, which is that's pretty good for 87. But
Yeah.
that's a lot of
Sounds like
power that
that's a
you're
pro
routing to
bowl
that
there.
barn.
Yeah.
I'd be worried about a fire actually in that situation. But yeah, it's just like a day to day, and then like random monsters just come out. It's kind of like if you've seen Things and Spookies, you
Yeah.
put it together, you take a plot out, and then you put rock songs in. But they're good songs.
I have to revisit that because I know I've seen it, but I feel like it's been probably 20 years maybe.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
There is
been
a
a while.
copy floating around on YouTube.
It's been a
which-
long time. I
Wow.
think
nice.
I think I watched that. What's the one you mentioned, Mike, off air with that's got Gene and Ozzy in it? What's
Oh yeah.
Trick or Treat?
Trick or Treat. Yeah.
Yeah. So when I was so let's say about 17 years ago, I had a band, one of many, of course, and we had a band house, and I lived there. My singer Aaron, I'm still pretty close with, is pretty well-known adult actor now, and he goes by the name of The Small Hands. But Aaron and I used to do a thing called Weird Wednesdays, and we would invite all our friends over and like order a pizza and get some beers or some pot cookies or whatever the hell we were into that week, and we would show like these obscure horror movies. And this went on for probably at least a good year. And I remember one of the showings was Trick or Treat. It might have been, what was it, Hard Rock Nightmare?
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah, it might have been that. Or no, Hard Rock Zombies. Is that what I'm thinking of?
Hard Rock Zombies. Yeah.
Oh,
that's the
yeah.
one. It's like
Which is funny because years later, the guy in it, EJ Curse, is a buddy of mine. We toured together a few times, but he's a musician. And what else? I think one of my picks was Terror Vision. If you guys remember that.
Yes, I love that.
Terror Vision so much.
I love Terror Vision. And so some of those movies, like even same thing with Trick or Treat, like I know I've seen at least thrice, but it's been so long that I don't remember. And then especially if they're like the music ones, a lot of times I feel like I've sort of like I lived that already, like literally in real life, minus like a vampire or a monster or a zombie. So I'm like, oh, there's a rock and roll themed zombie movie. I'm like, I'm gonna leave that alone. I feel like I've seen enough rock and roll
Been
zombies
there, done that.
in my life. Yeah.
Probably
Although
most of the same, like, oh, we got something to say about the music industry. And then like, well, a lot of these are kind of just saying the same thing, but like just different skins.
Yeah, more or less.
I will say I got to see Studio 666, which is a lot of fun. So that was the I guess it was the Foo Fighters, and they basically play heightened versions of themselves, and it's pretty great. I have to say, I feel like they all are like pretty good actors. Like I really didn't think that there was any kind of like bad performances.
I enjoyed it. I thought it was fun. It was meant to be schlocky and it was fun. My only qualm was it felt really long. But other than that, it was fun. It was cool to see, now Taylor Hawkins is no longer with us, but it was cool to see him have fun in that. And some of those guys sort of, so many people expect musicians, rock stars, or whatever you want to call them, to be so serious all the time. So fun to see them break out of this sort of monotony of just being like, I'm this guy on stage and I have to, be taken seriously all the time. So it was an enjoyable movie. Speaking of horror movies and rock and roll.
Yeah, and there was another recent one that I know, Andre, you and I really liked. That was Hellbender,
Yeah.
which isn't necessarily a rock and roll themed horror film, but I mean, it definitely has a pretty amazing metal soundtrack.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
And
I don't think I saw that.
It's on Shudder.
Only on Shudder right now.
Yeah.
It was part of a film festival last year, and then it wasn't really available until now. But it's like a mother and daughter who live in like the Catskills, near the mountains.
Yeah.
In New York State, and they have, like, one of them plays drums. I think the daughter plays drums, and the mother plays bass, and they both do vocals. And like, it's really just them two that live there by themselves, but they still, for each of their, I don't think they record. They're just kind of like playing and rehearsing.
Yeah, they were
like,
just kind of doing
trying out
it for
songs.
themselves in the movie. Yeah.
But they do these awesome like makeup and like outfit things for those songs. I think at one point the mom gets like this heavy metal crown that the daughter puts on her head. It's on the cover, I think, and it's really, really badass.
Cool.
Yeah, and it's like I just love when bands that are like super limited to like maybe even two main instruments can get such a big sound and such a wide variety of different timbres out of what they're writing and putting out. When a lot of people will kind of think of music and rock music specifically as something that has to have melodies and harmonies, and it has to have something catchy about it. But like, there's like, when you pare it down, like, anything could be catchy, like even just a rhythm or a bass line, or even just lyrics. So like, I mean, I think it works a little bit better than if it was like a full band that probably would have seemed a little bit shoehorned, but the small scale works for it in such a great way.
I got to check that out. I'll add that to my queue on Shudder.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. I know, like, we were both really impressed, and then I got to talk to so it's a mother, father, daughter in real life, and they make these movies together. And I'm like, kind of kidding, but not kidding. Totally adopt me, please.
Yeah.
That's so cool. But yeah, I'm really happy that like their movie's been doing really well. And like, I think the was it Tyler Posey, the daughter, Andre, is that her name? I think she's directing some, like, a solo project now, I think
so. Yeah, it's like Tyler Posey. That they're always working on new stuff. Like, they have a bunch of stuff in the works, but they tend to stick together and like do family projects. Oh, and by the way, the Hellbender band from the movie is actually their band. So if you see the movie and you're like, this is great, can I get like a copy of this? Yes, you can. The band is also called Hellbender, but the E's in Hellbender are sixes, and there are three E's in Hellbender, which is great.
That's pretty clever. That's really cool, actually.
Yeah, and yeah, so like I said, I got to interview them. They were so incredibly nice, very just cool, humble, like super laid back people. And yeah, so that's another thing you all should check out. Shutter's awesome, so check it out there. So what is your favorite like guilty pleasure or like bad movie? Like what's kind of like the pinnacle of like good bad for you?
I don't know. I probably had a solid answer years ago, but I feel like my time is so restricted nowadays that if I get 10 minutes into something that's not holding my attention, I just turn it off and go back to doing whatever I probably need to be doing for the day.
Yeah.
But I got during the pandemic era, if you will, I got really wrapped up in, I don't remember what it was called, one of those like dating shows, like um like what, I can't remember what it's called. I just know that guy Big Ed was on it. And I binge watched like 2 seasons of that over the course of like a month, and then embarrassingly like never told anybody about it. But I don't know. I don't really, I wish I had a good answer for you, and I don't. I feel like, I would basically just say any bad horror movie is sort of falls under that category. If I find myself watching something, maybe like Shudder does a Joe Bob Last Drive-In episode of something that I can't think of anything movie title specifically, but there have been a few where I was like, oh, I don't want to watch this, and I, sit through it anyhow just because I want to hear his little interludes.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I don't really, there isn't really anything, I don't think, at the moment, not that I can think of.
I will say like one that is kind of my go-to, and check it out if you can. It is called The Pit, and it is like this. Huh?
That's not a bad movie.
Well, some might consider it bad. I think it's one of the I'm not even like being ironic when I say it's a masterpiece. It's this like Frankensteinian, like sutured together mishmash of like Carrie and gosh, so many other different movies just blended together. And it's amazing. It's got a creepy kid. It's got a kinetic teddy bear situation going on.
What is it? Wait, what's the movie called?
The Pit.
Oh, yeah, it's like a mid-'80s flick.
Yeah.
Oh, I've seen it.
Might be early 80s.
Yeah, I know The Pit.
Shirt on the cover. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love the ending to it as well. It's just,
I think I saw that, and I used to get that, and is it called The Keep or The Gate? I can't remember.
The Keep.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I used to get those movies confused.
Maybe The Gate, yeah, because The Gate is like a bunch of kids too, and there's some little critters, and
yes,
like the gate to hell in their backyard.
Yes, that's what I'm thinking of. I used to get those movies sort of slightly confused. I think just all those like 80s horror movies that are like kind of directed at like adolescent kids or whatever, where it's like, if you're 40, you wouldn't watch that unless you grew up watching it,
Yeah. What's another one that's kind of like that? Like Monster Squad. That's a good one.
Exactly. Yeah, that's another one that's pretty, I would say, of the bunch, is definitely pretty mainstream. Sort of their take on the classic Universal monsters meet, the local hero kids or whatever, which then we sort of expanded upon with a more mature version for Lost Boys, I guess, with the Frog Brothers and I can't remember the kid's name, Michael and his kid brother, played by the actor who's passed away. Actually,
Corey Haim.
Corey Haim, thank you. I just saw my buddy Alex on Sunday. I've known for 20 years, and Alex is the first guy. I'm only name dropping him right now because I just saw him and I brought up Lost Boys, but he's the first guy to die in Lost Boys. He's the guy that ripped the car roof off, and he is trying to kiss his girlfriend reading the comic. That guy just came to hang out with me on Sunday. But
cool.
Yeah, great movie. I love all that stuff. That era, that like 1980 to like maybe early 90s, like even like People Under the Stairs. It's like the heroes are kids, so it's like kind of directed at a younger audience, even though it's definitely an R-rated film. Guys in a gimp suit and his dead bodies in the basement and all this stuff. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also starring like one of the couples of Twin Peaks, which is Wendy Roby and
yeah.
wow, I'm forgetting his name, but Big Ed, also Big Ed.
Yeah.
Big Ed's Dance Farm.
Did he just pass away, or did I make that up?
I don't remember.
Okay, my memory is so terrible. I thought I had heard that he had passed away, but yeah, they were cast together like that because of Wes Craven's fandom of Twin Peaks.
Yeah, I just love how just absolutely wild they get to be in that movie, where they're almost like alternate versions of themselves.
Totally.
That live far away from everything else and everyone else, but then they have like this, I don't know, like this cabal of like little kids and like critters underneath their house and like behind the walls and stuff, and it just gets buck wild.
It is one of my that's
quick.
probably like my last favorite horror movie from my younger days. Like anything else I saw that I've enjoyed since then is like something I saw as like an adult, and I love that movie. I probably watch it every 6 months or so. And his character, the daddy character, has got so many great like one-liners, just like gonna kill you, like it's like random violent nonsense. Now of course I can't, putting myself on the spot, I can't remember anything else that he says, but like I got him, he's like jumping around with a rifle with a bayonet on it or something, like, or a shotgun with a bayonet on it. So
he's like stabbing the wall or something, trying to
what a weird movie, but in a good way.
I was watching that with some friends of mine, and they had no idea how wild it was gonna get, and like they weren't necessarily horror people, so like but like we had food and they were just kind of there to eat and hang out, and they were like, oh, let's put this on, like we know this character, we love Twin Peaks. And I just every other like scene, I'm just looking over at them, and they're just like stone faced, like what do we do? Like, do we stay for the end of the movie out of politeness? Like, I could tell they just didn't know what to do with themselves. So sorry, guys.
That's a good deep end to jump into if you're not a horror fan, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, you could have followed it up with like Street Trash. I think that would have been a perfect.
Street Trash would be
definitely. They would leave by the keep away scene for sure. They would be out the door.
That's such a. I mean, I also think that's a great movie, unironically, Street Trash. And it kind of has a special place in my heart because Roy Frumkis actually gave me my first professional writing job on Films and Review. So it's kind of cool to have that even little tiny connection to Street Trash.
That's pretty cool. I get that. I get that in the sense of like working with somebody who's worked with, or nice. The guy from whatever band or whatever. I can appreciate that.
Yeah.
So what, like, is what's your favorite like recent horror film? Like, what's like something that's really like stuck with you?
It's admittedly a really short list. I usually go and see as many sort of mainstream, and when I say that, I mean like theatrical release films as possible, just to sort of feel like I'm supporting the horror community at large, I guess, or whatever you want to call it. But the last movie that I saw, and it's not even really a recent film anymore, it's got to be at least 10 years old, but the last movie that I saw that really I loved, that was a horror movie, was Babadook. I just loved that movie. It sort of didn't really scare me, but I just thought it was really unique and terrifying, mostly that obnoxious kid. But that I did really love what they did with Cabin in the Woods. I like revisiting that periodically just because I love all the homage, to every, there's there were the elevator scene or whatever, and there's all these different monsters and whatnot. And it also is very meta and sort of tongue in cheek and referencing other horror things. I don't know. Like I really love all the A24 and Blumhouse stuff. I thought the Invisible Man movie, I was gonna say remake, but it's not really a remake. Other than in name alone, I thought that was brilliant. I really loved The Witch. Everybody clobbered me with Midsummer and what was the other one?
Was that
the one
Hereditary?
About, yes, thank you, Hereditary.
Yeah.
Everybody and their mom was like, you got to see these movies, and I saw them both, and I gave them both 2 viewings, and I just didn't get it. Like, I just didn't
Yeah.
there were parts that were visceral or like disturbing or whatever, but I didn't walk away going like, oh, I love this movie. And they're not bad movies, they're wonderful movies. It just wasn't for me. But
yeah,
that's kind of it. It's like I said, it's a pretty short list, I would say, in the last 20 years of movies that really I want to revisit. I just saw the new Scream movie, and I don't ever want to see one of those again. But and I think what I did myself a disservice by binge watching all of them to like I was like, oh, I haven't watched a Scream movie in 15 years, so I'll start at 1 and work my way up to them. And by the time I got to the theater for the new one, which was 5 or 6 or 7 or 9 or whatever it was, I just didn't even care. So that was probably my own doing. But and again, it wasn't a bad movie. I just went in sort of begrudgingly going like, yeah, horror. And I left being like, no. But I'm enjoying the new Halloween sort of what are we calling them? Requels.
Yeah.
Just because why not? But they're not necessary. I think I liked the zombie movies more script wise, I guess, or whatever. I don't know. What about you guys? Got anything you gotta recommend the last 10 years or so?
I would say like right off the top of my head, like Get Out, I think is
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Get Out was great. Get Out was great. Us, I really loved too, but not as much.
This is great.
I think I need to re-watch that again. Because a lot of times, whether I'm only sort of part paying attention or I'm too dense, it could be a little bit of both. I'll finish a movie and I'll go, I feel like I'm missing something. And then I'll go through and my 4 a.m. adventures on Wikipedia every day where I'm just reading about nonsense. And I'm reading, like I did it with Hereditary. Like the movie ended and I was like, I don't fucking get it. And so I'm reading the whole synopsis of the film. I was like, oh, they're witches. Oh, okay, duh. It just didn't, whatever. I missed some 30-second sequence or something or whatever. I just remember having to rewind the end of Hereditary 3 times where it's like which was a treehouse or some scene and like whatever. And I'm going, I don't understand what's happening right now. So, I don't know, but I'll always give, my time to horror because it's like one of my lifelong passions. And like I said, I might get 15 minutes into a movie and decide that's not for me, but I'm still a lifelong fan. And I think it's great that the genre has become so, I don't know how old you guys are. I mean, I'm almost 40, but when I was 12, you couldn't go in and buy, a Tales from the Crypt pop Funko, or you couldn't get a Freddy Krueger onesie. It was sort of like it was pretty limited. And I think once maybe like Hot Topic and some stuff in the 90s came out, and then you could get stuff like that, it was really cool. And then now, which is great, but that it's so accessible. But I just remember, getting into my old, get off my lawn. But I remember as a kid where I still have it, actually. Ironically, I got this Freddy Krueger shirt and an Elvira shirt, not this one, that were both originally from the 80s. And I got them secondhand at a thrift store, and I'd never seen anything like that. And I was in middle school. You couldn't just walk into, now my tour manager I was just with him this weekend in LA for work, and he's wearing a Dream Warrior shirt, you know, Nightmare on Elm Street 3. And I go, where the fuck did you get that? And he goes, oh, Walmart. And like 20 or 30 years ago, that wasn't a thing, man. You know, it was like the video store had horror movies, and like, I don't know where you got the accoutrement and the shirts and stickers and stuff. They were out there, obviously, but like, it wasn't you couldn't walk into a Target.
That accessible.
Yeah. And so I don't even know where I'm going with this, but
yeah, it's
I like
funny.
that it's become mainstream, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, it's so funny because like I will like talk to people about like, you know, the VHS craze is kind of coming back, and you know, a lot of like younger people are like really into it, and I was like, you know, that was like nothing for me, and probably Ace, you too, just
Yeah.
and Andre, like just going to the video store and like just picking something because the cover was awesome.
Yep.
Like I had a like mom and pop place, so there would be like Halloween next to like Driller Killer next to Cannibal Holocaust or something.
Yep.
And I would probably rent all three of those, and well, you know, but
I had like the best of both worlds, because I lived with my mother, a single parent who worked like however many jobs. She'd once or twice a week run me into the video store and give me like a fiver, and go, you know, get something, don't get any stuff I won't like. And I'd come out with like Mouseketeers or whatever the hell on top, and then like what is it, Faces of Death underneath. Like, I got these Disney movies, and it was bullshit, you know. And or Driller Killer, or like, you know, Dr. Giggles, or some asinine, you know, whatever was new that's now old. And then I'd go stay with my dad every other weekend, and he'd be like, all right, we're going to rent some movies. And then he would go, all right, we're getting, you know, I'm trying to dig deep here. We're getting, you know, The Abominable Dr. Phibes and Night of the Lepus. And then I would pick, like I said, you know, like a trauma movie, or, you know, something else, Driller Killer, because I could get away with it. So I just had all that ingrained in me, and it was all VHS. I don't know when DVDs came out and became the thing, probably late 90s.
yeah.
But that VHS craze in the 80s and into the early 90s, with before Blockbuster and Hollywood Video took over, the mom and pop VHS stores were so fucking cool. Just all the like the cutouts and the displays and all the box art, and you know, that was what you did. You know, you'd go in and you'd see the Hellraiser, you know, the Pinhead there with the box, and you're like, I don't know what this is about, but it looks scary as shit, so I'm taking it home. You know, so
Yeah.
I missed that.
I mean,
I was one of those kids that like, I went to the video store, and part of why I went there was to look at those boxes, and I knew my parents wouldn't let me get them.
Yeah.
So I lived with those images in my head, and like I never really grew up with anyone like showing me horror movies. Like I kind of had to face my internal fear of like my idea of what those covers really meant. And a lot of like anyone, like including me, will tell you the covers are usually the best part of the movie that never happen. And far more grotesque than anything else that happens, unless it's a Fulci movie. But you know, you wouldn't see those a lot back then. But I persevered, and I went through and I started easing into the horror world. And I think like my first like full-fledged one was probably Friday the 13th. And then from there, I think it was hooked. Yeah. But those covers, they will live in my head.
You know, the one that sticks with me like to this day is Psychos in Love, that cover, which was amazing. I got to talk to the director, and he absolutely hated that cover art, which kind of blew my mind because it like literally jumped out at me as a kid. And Peter Jackson's Dead Alive with the
Yep. That's my mother you're pissing on. Yeah, I
Yeah.
love that movie. Same thing. I rented that. I was probably in like 7th grade or something like that. Way too young to see stuff like that.
And then I always like tell the story about, so my sister was dating this like true like punk guy, and he had stolen a copy of Bad Taste, and I guess he knew I was into horror movies and stuff, and he's like, here kid, have this, or I guess he let me borrow it, and I still own it to this day. So
Very cool.
mine, it is a stolen VHS of Bad Taste, which I think is the perfect way to watch that movie.
Tastes
Yeah.
better that
Well,
way.
yeah, I mean, I think it's cool to watch Peter Jackson have graduated from schlock into, being this sort of, like the Francis Ford Coppola of sword and sorcery over the last 20 years or whatever.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because, and Andre, I think this was like something we were talking about where, even like his like more like mainstream movies kind of always have that sort of like schlocky kind of tongue-in-cheekness, but it's glossed up with like $100 billion budget,
Yeah.
Yeah, it gets bigger every movie he makes. Where like Lord of the Rings, you can definitely tell that like he's got his schlock chops like in motion still. Or
Yeah.
like those orcs, they're deliciously gross looking. I love everything about it. Uh, King Kong is a little too, slick and uncanny valley looking, but that King Kong dinosaur fight was probably my favorite part of the whole movie.
Yeah. Same.
It's yeah, and I haven't really ventured into the Hobbit movies really, but he still has
You're not missing much.
full
Yeah.
harkens
Same.
back
I
once in
never
a
watched
while.
any of those.
Yeah, like yeah, so it's really interesting. Like I was talking to Rob Savage, who did Dash Cam, but he did the movie Host. That was pretty awesome.
Yeah. I saw Host.
Yeah, super nice guy. And I was like, one of my questions I had for him was, like a lot of these horror directors, like specifically like indie horror directors, are like getting scooped up for these big tentpole films. Like you have, Anna Wingard is now doing like stuff for Warner Brothers, and of course, James Wan is doing some pretty huge like superhero movies. And my question was like, would you be interested in something like that? And of course, I think it was like a no, but I don't know if you would see that paycheck though, and you could still feasibly put your kind of spin on it, like your own sort of voice to something that also just happens to have a huge budget. I mean, I think that there's a compromise in there.
Yeah, I would imagine so. I mean, if you're in the movie industry, I would think that eventually your goal would be to get to that sort of pinnacle. But I also, there's people that have different levels of maybe say integrity or whatever, or artistic desire that maybe that's not what they want. So you never know. It's probably case by case. I mean, you probably get a lot of indie directors out there that would jump at the chance, and there's probably guys like that might just be like, nah, maybe not.
Yeah. But if
Yeah,
I saw that huge paycheck, I don't know. It would kind of be like, I'll do whatever you want.
Yeah, it
yeah,
definitely probably be a career opportunity at the end of the day.
yeah.
Um,
I feel like there's a lot of factors to that, but like sometimes the experience of like making something, just going through, and like I can probably hazard a guess that like movie making is probably a specialized version of hell, even if it's something you want to make.
yeah.
It's probably something someone wouldn't want to go through against their will, when
Yeah.
it's like, here's a script, here's an idea, you're going to get paid this much, don't go over budget, and we want it done in like 8 months. And then that, even that, like there's an immense amount of pressure mentally at the start of that. So you kind of have to weigh those options. And it also really depends on how, um, I guess like versatile you might be assuming that like you are the director in this situation. And sometimes it's not worth the paycheck for, you know, your mental health or even like this physical health, because like there are some long shoots. Like standard shoots can go for like 9 hours a day, and you have to come back and do it all over again. But like I don't want to make it sound really disheartening or like no one should make movies anymore, but you know, you have to be really passionate and like into this thing, and you have something that you want to say or do that you think that no one else can do, no matter what that project is. If it's something that's was handed to you and you feel you can do something like really unique with it, or something that you've been making for however long a time, you know, passion project or paycheck project, like there's always a way to spin that so that you can boost your own morale. And I think that's the most important part of, I think, creating anything.
Yeah,
pretty much.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah, I mean, the filmmakers that I talk to, it's basically you just put out fires every day and hope for the best, you know. I mean, obviously more involved in that, but it just, you know, seems like a series of putting out fires and, you know, keeping everything on course. But yeah, I mean, that's why it's kind of a miracle any movie really gets made, let alone is good. And I was checking, and it seemed like we got some we got some nice donations, which is amazing. And if you are happen to just be joining this live stream, hey, we are raising money for Stand Up for Pits, which is a fantastic charity. And also just spreading some awareness, like what we were talking about up at the top of the show. So yeah, and just also kind of just having a pretty chill conversation with our very special guest. Andre, did you have any questions before I start rambling?
Yeah, so you've been a member of LA Guns for a few years now. I want to say maybe 2018 or so.
Yeah.
And it looks like you've recorded a couple albums so far. I'm curious, and this might be a yes, but like if you were a big LA Guns fan before joining, just wonder how, like, did they reach out to you, or is there like an application process for joining?
No, there was no application process. That would have been nice though.
Yeah.
I had worked my way up from my late teens, playing a lot of like punk rock bands, like Murphy's Law from New York City and the U.S. Bombs from Orange County and stuff like that. And I ended up playing in a couple rock bands with, like, you know, this guy from this band and this guy from this band. And one project I was doing at the time had the drummer who's still in Faster Pussycat. And so I got to know these guys, and that was probably like, I don't know, maybe 2007. And in 2009, they called me and said, we need a guitar player. And I sort of had a couple false starts and ended up touring with them starting in 2010. And I stayed with them through 2019. But through being in Faster Pussycat, I met and worked with guys in this sort of 80s hard rock scene, if you will. You know, I played with Steven Adler from Guns N' Roses intermittently, and you know, I'd get up and jam with, I mean, I've a lot of bands. Some of them I won't even get into, but my point is that's how I met the guys in LA Guns. And you know, around, it had to have been 2017 because a whole year went by, but they were sort of casually courting me. They were a member was the guy in my position, if you will, was leaving the band, and so they knew that was coming, if you will, and so and they would get somebody who would maybe fill in, if you will, for maybe a month or three, but wasn't joining the band or knew they couldn't be in the band or stay in the band. And so at every juncture, they would, management or somebody in the band would contact me, and it just kind of wasn't the right time. And then finally a year went by, and I had gotten home off of a really long tour, and they called me and they said, "Hey, what are you doing in August?" And I said, "I'm around," and they said, "Well, if we can get you to come down and jam and see how it feels." And so I showed up, and I think they had booked like 4 days of rehearsals or something like that. And I jammed with just the bass player and the drummer. And my bass player is a guy named Johnny Martin, and I've known Johnny since I was like 20. So we go way back. But so jam with him and our drummer Shane, who's sort of still in the band, but he's not at the moment. He's not doing our summer tour because he's in the last few years he started working for Kanye West, and so he's won a couple. I think he won a Grammy and is up for several more or something. I can't remember, but he's doing well. So, that sort of supersedes his time in the band. And so hence he's not doing the summer tour. But at the time, 4 years ago, it was Johnny and I, and we went through the set a couple times and as much we could without a singer and the lead guitar player. And sort of the two bosses or whatever, the two original members of the band. And Tracy Guns, who's the Guns of Guns N' Roses also, came down, and we went through the set maybe once or twice. And he's like, "You don't need to rehearse the next 2 days. This is tight. He's got this." Nice. And so it wasn't really an audition per se. It was just we all knew each other, and they'd seen me play and knew what I was sort of capable of. And a lot of times what people that don't do this for a living or full time or whatever you want to call it don't understand is it's not about do you have the skill set to do it or like the talent to play the songs on said instrument. There's other factors. It's, is your personality going to mesh? Are you a jerk? Are you a drug addict? Do you maybe look the part? There's all these other sort of, boxes to be checked. And presumably I ticked most of, I'd like to think, of said boxes. And my bass player and I were talking the other day about the band. One of the more popular records is an album called Hollywood Vampires, and no, it was actually my tour manager, and he says, you guys are the Hollywood Vampires, or at least at that time you were. There's a look to that. And I said, "Oh yeah, I know all about that look." So it was a relatively painless process. I love my band. I love my guys, everybody we've had. The band has stayed to the consistent lineup since I joined, although our drummer Shane left because he started working for Kanye again. And we had another drummer come in, Scott Coogan, who we've all known for 20 years. Ace Frehley band, Lita Ford. He was in the Blue Man Group, a ton of other stuff. Stephen Piercy from Rat. And then he had to go back out on tour with somebody else. And so we got Shane back and blah, blah, blah. But my point is that everybody that's the three drummers that we've had in the last 4 years that have been in and out of the band over the last few years, even before I joined the band, everybody's just really great, good people, kind, hardworking. So there's sort of an ethos with all that. And, I was in LA until, I guess it was yesterday, although it feels like a week ago already. But yesterday, my other guitar player, Tracy Guns, whatever, if you will, showed up at my hotel. I wasn't expecting that. I was expecting, my tech or an Uber or something. And he showed up, it's like, "Hey, I'm taking you to the airport, man." And I was like, "All right, cool." We sat and talked shop and, about our personal lives and music and the tour and all that stuff. So it's a nice relationship we all have. And, and I say that because not every band has that. And that unto itself can be exhausting. So it's nice to be in an organization or a group and with company with people that are very down to earth and kind. And my singer, after our first day of rehearsal over the weekend, he left rehearsal and he goes, "Hey, when you get back to the hotel," because he and I both live out of state, he goes, "When you get back to the hotel, text me." And I said, "Okay." And I hit him up and I said, hey, I'm back. It was like 10 o'clock at night. And he's like, oh, I just wanted to make sure that, you're doing okay and that you're happy and like see how you're feeling and your headspace is. And I was like, oh, I thought you wanted to talk about the band. And he's like, nah, I don't want to talk about that. I want to see how you're doing. It's like a friend. And I was like,
Good.
which is what it should be. And so it's a really great group. We've done, since I've joined the band roughly 4 years ago, we did an EP, we did a live record, we did a studio album last year called Checkered Past that did really well. One of the, I would say, probably my top 2 albums I'm most proud of. And then we have another studio album that's sort of halfway through production right now that we're going to work on the summer tour, intermittently. And that'll probably be out at the end of the year, but with the way things are, maybe early next year, but definitely within the next maybe 9 months. So it's been a good gig. It's really, we're all very, productive as a band. It's not like, let's just go out there and play the same stupid set we've been playing for 10 years. We like, change stuff up. And one of the albums that the band put out in 2002, because keep in mind, LA Guns has been around since 1985, 6.
Late 80s.
So one of the albums was reissued recently on vinyl, the Waking the Dead album from 2002. And so we were like, let's pull some stuff off of that since it just got reissued and now maybe some people are buying it for the first time. So it's nice to keep things interesting rather than just solely rely on being a nostalgia act, because I've done that as well and it can be a little, monotonous.
Yeah, and it seems like the deep camaraderie friendship aspect can really help, I guess, like for you guys to take a look at the music in the past and like you said, for the tour, like I'm sure you guys will be playing a lot of stuff from the 80s as well as like 2000s and now.
Predominantly, yeah. Well, I mean, we lean pretty heavy into the first 3 albums because those are the albums that were, selling hundreds of thousands of copies at the height of the band's popularity, so. But it's cool to be in a band that still puts out a record every 18 to 24 months. When I was in Faster Pussycat, I mean, for 10 years, the 10 years I was in the band, there was no album. So, and there hasn't been an album since maybe 2005. So that got a little, and I've been in other bands like that as well, where it was like, how many years can you devote to this without, it's like being a movie director who never directs a movie. It's like, well, I just sort of talk about it. So that got a little depressing at times, but, it's a really great gig. I love my guys. I love the songs. There's a lot of diversity for being a hard rock band. I mean, some of the stuff, one of our more recent singles is a song called Get Along. It's sort of almost like a Black Crowes kind of vibe, like acousticy, sort of folky thing. And then we have songs like Killing Machine that are like straight up like Metallica. And but the average pace is we're a rock band, so it's cool. But there's also some punk rock influence actually on the first LA Guns record, talking about Return of the Living Dead and whatnot. The first LA Guns record, the drummer on that is a guy named Nicky Beat Alexander. And Nicky before that was in the Germs and the Mau Mau's and Gun Club, and he might have been in the Cramps. I have to really rack my brain. I think he might have been in the Cramps briefly, but I could be wrong. But he was sort of this go-to punk rock drummer who ended up in LA Guns. So there is sort of like an undercurrent of punk rock too, which I can appreciate.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it's interesting you were talking about like you guys are obviously like really good friends. I mean, I'm sure you're gearing up for a tour, and I'm sure like that's got to be grueling all by itself, but then it probably makes it so much easier when you all get along really great, and like it seems like it's like a pretty cool group to be with.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely nice to wake up and have somebody be like, can I get you coffee, or how'd you sleep, versus whatever the antithesis of that is. But I mean, because I've experienced all of the above. But yeah, I mean, it is grueling. I think that's another thing that people who don't do what we do might, there's this misconception that it's whatever people picture in their minds, and unless you're the Eagles or U2 or Kiss or somebody at that level where you're, you know, you have a bus and I have a bus and that guy's got a bus. You know, when you're playing clubs or theaters, like LA Guns does, you know, I mean, there's some humbleness that needs to come along with it, because the reality is you're all traveling in close quarters and you see each other all day, every day for weeks or months on end. And it can be, what did you say, grueling? It can be grueling at times, but it's definitely helpful when you're with your friends and with good people and you're having a good time. And you know, it's the coolest job in the world. I mean, I can't lie. You know, I mean, I'm sure there are probably cooler jobs, like maybe being, you know, like a astronaut or something. I don't know. But you know, I mean, I get to play music for a living, and I'm fortunate in that regard. And it gives me opportunities to do things like this, to whether it gives me the opportunity to collect one sheets or to help pit bulls or to meet new people or, you know, jam or collaborate or write or play with or meet my favorite, you know, musicians or directors or actors or comics. And all of that comes from the fact that I'm Guy from whatever band or whatever it is. And so I'm very aware that I'm fortunate from that, and grateful that I've been given so many opportunities, because sometimes I'm not really sure why. I think maybe just being really good at self-deprecating, but you know, I try to work as hard as I can, you know, on as many projects as I can fathom at one time. And you know, I like, whether I have a Patreon, which keeps me really busy. We've got a steady stream of 70 to 80 people I've had for years now, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it is a lot. You know, sending out, got stacks of envelopes here that go out to certain people, and you know, creating content exclusively for Patreon, and you know, writing sessions and studio sessions, and being in 2 active bands, and having dogs, and having a personal life, and all these things. So it's a lot all the time, but it's a good thing. And so I'm happy that I have all that, and it all stems from being a guy in a band, you know. So yeah. I'm grateful, is my point. But
yeah,
cool. It's been a fun
that's
ride.
awesome. And I just wanted to give a quick update. We've raised $250, which is amazing.
Awesome.
All right, nice.
Yeah,
Awesome.
I'm, you know, like, let's keep it coming. But yeah, that's so awesome.
Yeah, thank you everybody who's donated, by the way.
Yeah, I'll ditto that. Like, thank you all for you know, doing what you can, and as we said earlier, if you can't necessarily donate, share the link. That's
yeah. How long is
helpful.
how long will the GoFundMe be up?
So we're gonna have this up for an entire week after this. So that way we can raise as much as we possibly can. Yep.
Yeah, great. Okay, because I know there were some people that I had spoken to, even through my Patreon, that weren't able to sort of attend live here. I was just curious if they saw it tomorrow or Tuesday.
Yep.
Yeah,
cool.
definitely.
Great. That's great to hear.
Yeah, we'll definitely keep it going. Yeah, so you know, what's kind of cool is Andre does music.
No
He
shit.
studied music, and
Yeah.
that's
Well, not as much as you, Ace, but like, you know, I went to music school, music college, and like I started as a classical pianist. I had done that for about 10 years before going to college, you know, alongside grade school, middle school, high school, through all of that. And I I would say that like I kind of had a love-hate affair with classical music, but I did recognize it for the tools that it gives you for understanding and like absorbing like concepts of, you know, of music theory. You could go we could go into a whole rabbit hole of music theory and all that stuff, but I'm not going to.
That's a lot of math.
It's a lot of math. It's almost like a puzzle in a way, especially with classical music, because like there's always one or two like acceptable solutions, and I didn't really like that. So when I went to college, I came there as a classical pianist performer, but then I switched over to music composition and was starting to explore a little bit more of the I guess things are kind of bisected here. So like you're either a classical person or you're a jazz person, and like
I see that.
the jazz side, I never fully got there, but you know, there's just so much more interesting sounds, combinations, and just attitudes about the music than there is about classical. But I didn't want to like throw classical to the curb or anything, so I wanted to use some of the things that I picked up and really resonated with on that side, like the mathematics and the structure really clicked for me, and but like the spontaneity and just the embracing the unexpected of jazz and also the cooler chord progressions really sparked like this inspiration in me as well. So I had started writing some instrumental stuff there, but during my time there, I kind of gravitated towards like an electronic music, but more like a handmade thing. And I haven't really written that much music in terms of like a body of work, but it's a really like interpersonal experience, I think. And I haven't written music with other people, but I've always wanted to, and I can only imagine that's like an extremely like almost like intimate but communal experience where like you share some aspects of your mind and personality with someone that like it clicks in a different way than if you're just like hanging out with your friends watching a movie or
like any kind of relationship with any person. Like you'll meet people, you're like, oh, I don't click with this person, or this person's a jerk, or this person's not for me. And you'll meet people, you're like, you're my new best friend, or whatever. Or you know, and so it's like that when you're collaborating with people. I mean, I've worked with people where it wasn't a thing, and I've worked with people where it was very fluid and gelled really well. And you know, I mean, music is like the universal language of humanity in a sense, because pretty much everybody to some degree loves music of some in some degree, you know, whether it's like you said, jazz or classical or hip hop or techno or death metal or, you know, fourth wave ska or whatever the hell it is. And
some weird fringe genres and stuff.
I mean, nowadays, especially with the advent of the internet, there's you know, the entire world is at your fingertips. And so which is, I think, is amazing, and you know, to a certain degree. But I've just recently started getting into composing, and I've been actually partnered with a buddy of mine who writes music for film and television for a living, and is pretty done pretty well with it. So now we're building this library of they call them cues for television, and so I've been sort of left to my own devices, and basically like the template is 100 seconds or 60 to 100 60 to 100 seconds of music, you know, with maybe a lull in the middle or a bridge or a B section, whatever you want to call it, and you know, with a BPM of this to this sort of parameter, and go. And so I was sending in stuff that was, you know, bordering on classical arrangements, and then sending in stuff which I was leaning more towards that was like sort of Atticus Ross and Trent Reznor, you know, synth heavy and percussive, and kind of like, you know, what would Trent Reznor do or whatever. And I hate to say this because I used to poo-poo on that, but I'm actually enjoying that more than I am playing guitar most of the time now, because it's something new and exciting to me, rather than I'm like, oh, okay, it's in B minor, what's it going to go to G and A major and E major and maybe a D, you know. It's just, I feel like I did all that already, but not that I don't love it, but it's nice to break out of just being a guitar player.
Yeah, it's a different experience between being part of the band sound, like as you are with backup vocals and rhythm guitar, like feeling that fall into place has a certain satisfaction, I would imagine, but like is a different type of satisfaction than you would feel if like something that you wrote or arranged or composed or did all of the above for, even maybe performing. It's a completely different feeling of just like, yeah, just like satisfaction or pride, maybe sometimes, especially
Yeah.
when you've been working so long on something and like something like finally clicks and you get it and you really feel proud of what you've worked on, and you feel comfortable and secure, like releasing it to the world.
Yeah,
Which
it's not easy. It's
great.
not easy. I mean, I have countless half finished compositions that I'm either, insecure in or unable to complete or what have you. And I think most artists in any degree or in any field have probably the same thing. And seeing something completed, and released or on the radio or in a film or television or some digital platform, is definitely a very satisfying feeling. And I can't remember, I don't know how many albums I'm on. I would say at least 30 in my career, whether it's top to bottom or a guest on a song or three, or maybe I just wrote 2 songs or what have you. But it's a nice, those are always nice accolades to have. And I, like you said, sort of writing, especially with music, it's a very personal thing. I mean, as long as you're doing it for the, there's guys that do it for, like session writers. One of my best friends in the world is a session writer, and it's your job, so you show up and you do your job. But like maybe like yourself, you're this pianist, and you're probably, I would assume, very talented, discussing what your schooling and whatnot. But that's much different from some, like a staff writer. You know what I mean? It's probably way more personal for you than somebody whose job is to just crank out 24 to 48 pieces of music every week, regardless. And you're probably a little more passionate about it than some of those people are. Just the same way when people ask me about being a touring musician for a living, I'm like, I mean, it's more or less is not to downplay it, but it's my day job. So it loses a little bit of that, the je ne sais quoi, when it's like, I'm like, well, back to work. It's now that's not the same thing as writing and recording and producing music and releasing an album. But out pounding the pavement can be, like you said, it can be tedious. So it's nice to hear when people are writing music or coming up with music or enjoying their instrument, from their heart, rather than just like, oh, I have to do this. Because sometimes my life is more the latter, like, well, I get the guitar out, time to sit down and go over whatever.
Yeah, there's almost like 2 different ways that you could approach that sentence. Like, I have to do this, where it's like, I have to go to work, I have to do this, or like, I'm so excited about this, like, I have to do this.
Yeah.
And like you take that energy with you. And yeah, it's almost like indescribable in a way, because it's so different for each person.
Of course.
And then even there, like, it differs on like what instrument it is, if you're playing an instrument or if you're using your voice. The processes are so much different too.
Yeah.
And then it's there's no one answer for each person.
Of course not. And I mean, even for me, like, I'm not saying every time I go on tour or get on stage or pick up my guitar, it's work. But that is the underlying theme, that my career is that. So there are times where I do it. I was playing something last night, I guess, and I was like, oh, what a cool riff. What a weird thing. I was going from like B to G to like E flat to B to G to D, and then I went to like D flat, C sharp, whatever, and then somehow I ended up at F, and I was like, this is cool. It was like, almost, it wasn't metally, but it was very I don't know, it doesn't matter. And I was like, oh, this is exciting. This is something cool, rather than just like, oh, I'm going to, practice the set list for a tour, or I'm going to go do like Sunday I did some cover songs at the Whiskey Go Go, and I was like, oh, I have to learn these songs, and it wasn't necessarily that I wanted to. Now the show was fun and I enjoyed being up there, but the getting to there was like it was work. So it's cool when I hear that there's, I forget sometimes that not everybody is in the same shoes as I am, or you pick up or you sit down at your instrument and you're enjoying that. So, I kind of miss having a little bit more of that sort of spontaneity and the joy of picking it up when I maybe choose to, rather than some of the time when it's a necessity. So and now I just sound like a spoiled jerk. So peaks and valleys.
Yeah, definitely. That's music.
Very true. Very, very true.
It's never equal either. Sometimes you can make your own peaks, I guess is what some people can get from it. It depends solely on your situation, but there's something to it, and I think everyone should try different things. If you
absolutely.
are a musician, instrumentalist, vocalist, just mess around, and just write down anything that's cool to you. It doesn't matter if you never use it. Like you can always go back to that. Or maybe you'll remember it forever if you don't write it down, but 99% chance you won't.
I have literally thousands of voice notes in my phone, whether it's just me humming a melody or with an electric guitar that's not even plugged in, trying to remember little ideas and pieces and stuff like that. And, I think it's also important to have an eclectic palette when it comes to music. And of course, not everybody wants that, and that's totally fine too. But I think if you're going to be a musician, I think it's very beneficial to listen to, like, if you're in a death metal band, you should listen to more than just death metal. And if you're in a jazz ensemble, you should try to think outside those boxes and incorporate other things. And, we're talking about, what was the question about, what kind of movies I like that are maybe like, not embarrassing, but like sort of,
like bad movies.
Yeah. Or whatever. And it's like, when I get asked about what are my sort of obscure, weird, or like embarrassed albums or whatever, and I say nothing. I'm not embarrassed of anything. I said, I will literally go to my record collection and pull out Enya and spin that. And then I will go to, Beastie Boys to, Slayer to Vivaldi in an afternoon, because I can, you know what I mean? Like, right behind me right now is, I don't remember which album it is, but Depeche Mode, whose drummer just passed away, Dead Kennedys, and the Bride of Frankenstein soundtrack. So those are all kind of, you got punk rock and a sort of new wave electronic artist band, and then a score. So none of those are the same genre, and I try to utilize that as an artist, or whatever, as a musician, and cull from that. I might hear a melody, in some, I listen to a lot of Tim Burton's composing, and I might hear a melody in that. And I actually did do this recently, and I was like, I'm going to take that melody and I'm going to transpose it to this other key, and it's an orchestral. It's, whether it's a piano or a whatever, as a cello, and then I'm going to put it on guitar, and no one's going to know that the sequence of 7 notes came from that, So I like having a wide palette to choose from. I always try to recommend that to people that are, especially as a musician, if you're a drummer or a guitar player or a pianist or a flautist or whatever the hell it is. I think it's good to sort of have a broad palette to choose from, because you can literally take a melody from a death metal song and literally put it to flute or violin or whatever. You might not be the same tempo, but you could take those notes and move it up 4 octaves or transpose it from F to C or whatever it is, and there you go. You've got some whole new monster.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, there like different influences can also bleed through. Like I think maybe one of the best examples of that would be so the synthesizer artist Wendy Carlos did a series of albums called the Switched On Bach, which is just like a bunch of Bach keyboard compositions just played on the famous Moog synthesizer, and adds quite a bit of like maybe more than nuance, but like there is nuance there, and also just like it's almost like remixed in a way. But
What's her? I'm sorry. What's her name? I actually want to write that down.
Oh yeah, Wendy Carlos.
Wendy Carlos. I'm curious to hear that.
She also did the original score to the original Tron film, which I love.
That's where I know that name from. Okay.
Yeah, Wendy Carlos, so great. Yeah, I think there's like 2 or 3 Switched On Bach ones. Honestly, her entire body of work is absolutely fantastic. But that's just like one example of like someone from the then like modern era going back and just showing like maybe just like a fan appreciation, but voicing it in their own way and showing how much they appreciate this, the ideas that they learned from like, I guess in this case, like Baroque classical masters of the past. And there's a lot of that like structure, classical, that has been adopted into a lot of rock music, specifically like hard rock, heavy metal, like what people call classic rock, which was just known as rock back then. So whatever. And like it's still around. Like it's just like the AABA form. Anyone who doesn't know what that is, it's like you have a theme, you call that A, and then you repeat that maybe with a variation, and then B, which is like a bridge, something that sounds completely different, but then you go back to the main theme, which would be A. And like there's a bunch of different variations on that. Everyone's heard an AABA song before. And yeah, it's a certified crowd pleaser.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, and I'm like the odd man out because I'm always so impressed though. Like, I think you sent me your SoundCloud and I thought it was really awesome. Like the stuff that you put together.
What, the voiceover stuff?
No, I was sorry with Andre's.
Okay, I was like,
music,
I was like, oh, I didn't realize I sent that. I'm sorry, I misinterpreted what you said. I have a SoundCloud link because I do voiceover occasionally too. As a
cool.
Oh, nice.
Getting way off topic. Send me your SoundCloud link. I'd like to check that out.
Okay, yeah. My music tends to lean towards like the creepy, But
I'm
I mean,
all
being
for
a horror fan, like it's not going to weird you out, I don't think.
I was gonna say we like that here.
Yeah.
Yeah, but no, I just think it's so fascinating because like I'm always kind of in awe when I hear like 2 people like so passionate about what they do, but also something that like I have an appreciation for, but like nuts and bolts, like I'm like
it's Greek.
A complete
like don't
get
it
over my head.
That's all right though. That's all right. I mean, that's like when I'm talking to somebody who does film or and is like a painter or something like that, I can appreciate it, but I have no idea what goes on into that.
Yeah, and it's so interesting. Like when I was listening to you guys talk about like putting things out there that you're really like
he's chewing on my pillow, so I'm trying to get him to stop. Hey.
And see, aren't they just so vicious and
I know, right?
He's licking that pillow to death.
But it's so interesting because like with my film guide, it was kind of weird because when you create something, you put something out there and it's not yours anymore. And that's kind of terrifying. Like it belongs to the public, and that's again, it's deeply satisfying and humbling, but it's also, again, so weird and kind of scary because you don't really, I mean, just using myself as an example, I didn't know if people were going to like my book or if they were just, ignore it or hate it or whatever. And I mean, it's kind of cool because like I'll still get like tweets where people are like, oh yeah, I really enjoyed your book, or I was having a bad day and like it perked me up and I got to like discover some new movies because of that. And I still am like floored and like humbled by that because it's just, yeah, it's incredible. Like I never thought that I could actually like make something that somebody would A, want to buy, and B, actually like enjoy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, but what a great feeling though, right?
Yeah. Like the first time I got my my personal copy of the book, it was like the feeling is undescribable. I mean, it's probably like the first time you get like a pressing of like something you recorded, or it's just like seeing that physical thing there is just wild.
I mean, it's a great feeling. I mean, anytime you put so much work into something like that, and your book comes out or your record comes out or anything like that, or you're having an art exhibit or whatever. So, it's always great to have that release. But then when it's appreciated by other people, is even infinitely more wonderful feeling.
Yeah, it's again, it's like I see like my book out in the wild, and I'm like, that blows my mind. I mean, it's like I hope that never not humbles and floors me, because I am just so like always grateful that anybody would want to like actually pay for something that I created. It's mind blowing. Yeah. And speaking of, we got another $10 donation, so that brings that total up to $260 that we raised so far. Awesome.
Thank you, everybody.
Y'all are awesome that are donating. And again, if you can't donate, just share the link. That helps a lot. And again, we're just spreading awareness too, because Stand Up for Pits does a lot of really great stuff. Reading Up, they do a lot of outreach and educational work. And yeah, that's what you need, because I know we were talking about it, but it's really frustrating when these really great dogs get this bad rap, just because like there's awful humans that are not treating them well.
Yeah, exactly. And the numbers are pretty staggering when you dig into it to see how many of them are euthanized in especially here in America on a weekly basis. So it's about bringing awareness to them as just another living sentient being, but also as a wonderful domesticated pet that could be your best friend, or Mila's my registered emotional support animal, actually. And versus I read some news article that these dogs are terrible or something atrocious like that. So it goes just beyond raising funds for an organization or whatever. It's like you said, awareness and getting people to network. And maybe I have a guy that I give a guitar lesson to frequently, who maybe on the third or fourth lesson told me, he goes, I used to be really afraid of those dogs. And, I follow you on Twitter. It's sort of almost comparable to like you were talking about with your book. And he goes, and I would see how much you were, drawing attention to these dogs and networking, and et cetera, et cetera. And he goes, I feel like my opinion was based on nothing. It was just some conclusion he had come to, that he said, we were doing like a Zoom guitar lesson, and he's telling me, he goes, I don't ever think I've ever even met one of these dogs. I wasn't bit by one of these dogs. I just knew that they were scary. And I was like, I can attest that 99.999 of them are not very, if anything can be scary, if you want it to be scary, you'd be scared of a box of crayons if you had enough reason. Yeah. But or whatever. But at the end of the day, they're just these, warm, cuddly, seal-shaped, farting love bugs that want to cuddle and have a roof over their head and be loved, and in that return give love back. And you'll never, not just pit bulls, but and I know certain people are more of cat people and there's dog people, but I really don't think that you'll ever find a more reciprocative love than from a domesticated dog. I think that's just this, they don't care if you lose an eye or your arm falls off or you have shingles or you're bald or you're stupid. They will love you regardless. Yeah. And you can't say that about, a sibling or your girlfriend or boyfriend or whatever, because those things weather and fade, and not all the time, not always, but sometimes. That's why we have divorce and separations and friends aren't friends anymore, et cetera, et cetera. You will never have that with a dog. Your dog will not wake up one day and go, I don't like what you said to me. It's not going to do that. It's, I'm going
to pack my stuff and leave.
Yeah. And if that's the case, you were probably abusing that animal pretty terribly. But excluding that type of scenario, I mean, that's the whole thing for me is my dog Mila is like somewhere between my child and my best friend and like a therapist. So, I can't really say that about any other living being in my existence. So, and that's just how, of course, that's just me. I'm speaking for myself, but I know how wonderful that is. So why wouldn't more people want to, be open to that and again, it's not just about pit bulls. I mean, I tell people all the time, I go, if you're looking for a Chiweenie or you're looking for, I keep going to Lhasa Apso just because it's a funny name. If you're looking for a specific type of breed, there's probably a rescue organization somewhere, maybe not in the state, but somewhere in your time zone or in, we're talking about especially Chihuahuas or pit bulls, or maybe even like sort of some Labrador type generic larger dogs. There's going to be a rescue or a shelter or some facility in your town or nearby that has a plethora of these dogs that are just looking for an animal, a home, whether it's you or your grandma or your sister or your kid or whatever. So, it was great to see how many people during the pandemic adopted or fostered or rescued pets. Yeah. And of course, the negative side was when their lives reverted to normalcy, there was a huge pushback on a lot of dogs, especially being returned, which was awful. But, of that initial group, there was still a huge percentage of people that were like, yeah, I'm just working from home for the last 6 months. I figured I might as well bring a dog into my house. I mean, that was kind of how I ended up with Rufus. It was a year ago, roughly, actually 14 months ago. I said, I don't know when I'm touring again. I don't know what I'm doing other than working from home. I've got this big house to myself and a yard. I said, I might as well bring somebody in, off the streets, like literally. And so then it worked out for the best. So I just hope to impart that joy, or help or facilitate or network for more people to do the same for themselves, so. And that'll conclude my TED talk on that. But
yeah, and I mean, I completely agree, and I also think that just seeing these dogs and how like gentle and loving they are, like I think that kind of brings it home too. I mean, again, when I see your posts and just how like adorable and lovable they like the pictures are.
Yeah,
I think that kind of further sort of tries to destigmatize pit bulls in a big way.
I hope so. I really do.
And yeah, it's I'm actually really happy that we seem to be getting some good donations for Stand Up for Pits. And as I said earlier, I'm gonna have this link up for another week. So don't worry, you can still donate. So we want to give everybody a chance that wants to give a little something, or as I said before, if you can't donate, that's fine, like sharing the link,
Yeah.
giving it a tweet, a retweet, all that good stuff.
Yeah, networking goes a long ways nowadays. And so does, as somebody who pledges, which is regularly, which is where, someone will post an animal that is needing adoption or foster or rescue or anything, any kind of help. I pledge, more money than I have to give away regularly, but $5, $20, it all goes a really long way when you extrapolate it by, hundreds of people seeing it. You get a couple people that throw in $2, or somebody throws in $100, and you get another 20 people that each put in $5, which doesn't sound like a lot of money, but it adds up, especially when you have severe cases of abuse or neglect or medical treatment or anything like that. It's just about kind of adding to that positive force, if you will. And I really, really, really genuinely detest social media personally. I'm not a fan. I wish I didn't have to be on any of it. And the only reason I opt to stay on some platforms is predominantly to continue to network for animals. And then because it's obviously, like the name implies, it's a social network. And so it's easy for me to keep in touch or hear about, like I had a friend that just passed away, and you hear about these things from that and such and such. But there's just so much vitriol and negativity and toxic this and that, and all these things. And it's such a static in everybody's life, and especially in my own, where I wish for more peace from that. And I hope to have someday. But one of the things that I enjoy, or one of the few things I enjoy from that, is the animal rescue aspect, the networking. And feel like, rather than going on and, fuck you and all this kind of stuff about whatever the topic du jour is, it's nice to have that to wake up every day and go, and see, people networking and tagging me and stuff, or whoever, and just continuing to share these things. And I tell people, sometimes I get on my high horse and I get kind of shitty with people, not specifically, but I'll, maybe every 6 months I'll make a post that says, like, it's really not that hard to hit retweet when you see it. I'm predominantly on Twitter, but your feed of whatever platform, especially Twitter, is not so self-indulgent and so important that everybody gives a shit about, like, what magazine you're reading or the popcorn you had at the movie. It's okay to intersplice it with, helping children with cancer or a cat rescue or something else other than everybody's, me thing all day long. And I guess I'd like to say that I aware that my social media, or Twitter, I should say, leans heavily towards, whether, oh, you're putting out a new book, let's share your book. Or you're putting out a new classical album, let's share that. There's a dog in Duluth that needs networking, or Sheboygan or Poughkeepsie. Okay, great, let's share that. Rather than just like, hey, everybody, look at what I'm doing. Look at me. There's so much of that. And that's not a bad thing, but it can be really overkill at times, where, I have some friends in all fields of life where at times I'm like, I'm looking and I'm like, I don't fucking care about your dinner for the 7th day in a row, bro. I just don't. Like, there's got to be more to your life than just, like, if I only posted the records I bought, although that's kind of cool, it would get monotonous, and so unless that's your platform, unless you have your platform is based on that, then I get that. But just, I think sometimes, occasionally, people forget that all of us but for speaking personally, people forget that I'm a fucking human being, and they expect me to be like, oh, I'm in a rock band, I only do rock band stuff. And I hate that. That's so insulting to me I'm like, I was a human being before I was the guy in the band you like, bro. Sorry to break it to you, and and at the end of the day, I'll still be a human being. And as a human being, my interests are horror movies and punk rock and pit bulls. And so I push for the latter because it's something that's important to me and I think is beneficial to not just me and my record collecting or my ego, but just something, and I'm totally on a rant here, my soapbox, but because it's something that gives to more, there's a bigger spectrum than just like, oh, how can I make some money or how can I look cool or get a obscure record. It's like, oh, I'm helping to save, maybe indirectly or inadvertently or in some minuscule capacity, to save an animal or a pet or a dog or a cat or a whale or a raccoon or whatever it is. And to me, that carries way more weight than what somebody thinks about my guitar playing or if they like my fucking hat or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it's all about moderation, and I try to have that in the back of my mind and be humble about it rather than like, maybe you guys have heard of me. I've worked with this guy and I have this guitar and I've got like, who fucking cares? I mean, there's like an hour out of my day where that's required. And then there's the other 23 hours where I would rather be discussing the Return to Living Dead soundtrack or why pit bulls, we need to abolish the negative stigma about them, or whatever it is, so and then this week I'm not going to get into it, but this week I've just been heavily, with the shootings and just the gun violence that this country is fucking plagued with. And I say that as a victim of gun as someone who's been affected in multiple levels by gun violence. I mean, I've been robbed at gunpoint. I've had a gun pulled on me multiple times. So I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. But this week, especially, my head has just been in that mindset. And it's just so frustrating to open social media and see people that are like, whether it's, I don't like pit bulls are terrible or, fuck those kids or what, or these so many people with that. And that is why those things are what make me go, wow, I don't want to be on social media. I don't want to do any of this. I just want to stay here, cuddle my dogs and play my guitar or listen to, Paganini, like, or Cannibal Corpse or whatever I'm into that day, and be away from all of that static. And so, again, I'm tangenting on my little soapbox, but it's a really weird world we live in, and there's just so much going on. So I'm just trying to find my center, man, by helping some dogs, and that's why we're here, I guess.
Absolutely. And it's so interesting because you're wearing the Elvira shirt, and I met Cassandra Peterson a couple times, and the first time I met her, she absolutely nice as can be, but one of the first things I said was, I wanted to thank you because she was one of the first people to like use her voice as a celebrity to talk about the AIDS epidemic.
Yeah.
And like when our president at the time wasn't even doing anything, her and a handful of celebrities were really like using their voice and their platform to raise money and awareness and get people kind of woken up about it. And that's important, whether it's talking about like AIDS or talking about like animal rescue. It's you kind of need to remind people why this is important and why so I mean I love when anybody can kind of use their voice, their platform. Like I do not have a big platform at all, but I feel like the little bit that I do have, I try to, use that responsibly.
And as you should.
Yeah, like
Mhm.
yeah, and I think, I mean, I know I'm guilty of some of the vacuous stuff, but I try to be a little more like mindful, I guess, especially lately, of like what I'm putting out there.
Yes, same.
And yeah, because it does have an effect. I mean, you might not think it does, but every little thing you do kind of, I think, matters to somebody.
Yeah, correct.
So yeah, I think it's so great. Like I said, seeing your posts, seeing like all the kind of like awesome energy and love you put out there with these dogs, like really resonates with me, because I mean, I'm a big dog person. I don't have pit bulls. I have a little pug.
Oh, great. I had a roommate that had a pug, so I lived with one for a long time.
Yeah, he is a eating, sleeping, farting
Farting.
machine.
Yep. Yeah, that they are.
I was kind of hoping he would make a little appearance, but I think he's probably,
Retired for the evening.
yeah.
I get it. My two have been
Oh
talked out
yeah.
this whole
Yeah,
time.
you figured out.
Like it's so funny. I'm like, man, I took the most adorable picture earlier. He was like, I had my headphones on the couch, and my dog's name's Max. So he laid his head down on them. So it looks like he's like laying down some funky beats there. But yeah, I just, yeah, I mean, I cannot stress enough how I think it's awesome what you're doing. Just with all the posts, doing like these streams, just everything. It's really fantastic. Like, again, it's something that in the back of my mind is something I've wanted to do, but then when I've seen like, the cross section of, okay, Ace loves horror movies and he's into something that is really important, animal rescue, like that perfectly intersects. And yeah, I think that it's just something that, again, you put it perfectly. It's just, yeah, everybody kind of does their like, okay, here's what I'm doing. This is what's important to me. That, I feel like that's pretty normal, but yeah, like put something good out there also. Like that's kind of like what I'm trying to be better at.
It's okay. It's okay for creators, artists, whatever you want to call celebrities, whatever, to have a cause. I think it shows that, that's not, we're not some like autonomous like android or whatever the hell. Like I always make the analogy of like a grinder box monkey, like the bus shows up, I get out there, and I go and I do the thing and, hey, shuck and jive. And I get back in my little grinder box and, they zip me off to the next city or whatever the hell it is. And that's great. But, there's still the other 23 hours out of every single day. And it's good for people to have a cause. And whether you're, whether you're Dwayne the Rock Johnson or you're a struggling writer or whatever, it's okay to say like, this is what I do for a living, or this is what I'm passionate about, or this is what I'm creating, but also these are the things that I like. And so I try to give, the sort of the small platform that I have, a sort of healthy cross section of what I enjoy and what I do and what I create, and then what I support and what my causes are. And obviously I lean towards the latter couple because it at times can be more important to me than like, oh, look at this guitar I'm playing or something like that. It's a little trivial. And I wish ultimately I had more resources. I wish I had more monetary assets or whatever. I wish I could do more. Occasionally there's a misconception that I have my own rescue or organization or something like that. I don't. I'm just an advocate. I mean, I was partnered with Best Friends Animal Society for a while and some other organizations. I was just in Baltimore about 3 weeks ago hosting an event, Project Runway, for Show Your Soft Side and Petco Love. It was predominantly athletes, which sports I don't do. I don't know anything about the Baltimore Ravens and all that, but it was all these famous athletes and then like 2 musicians and me, and so I'm holding up this pit bull puppy in front of a couple thousand people, and the adopting and everything. It was great. It was a really great event to be a part of. But that was way cooler than like doing a meet and greet, So I don't know. I just want people to remember, and not just regarding me, but in general, that like, because you like an artist or a singer or a drummer or a painter or a comic or a director or an actor, behind the art is still a human being. And whether they're passionate about, Rwanda or gun control or, reproductive rights or whatever, or you have people on the opposite side of stuff, that, like James Woods, very staunch conservative, and it's okay for him to have that opinion, and it's okay for you to still like Videodrome or whatever, doesn't mean I'm gonna give him my money now. But it still shows that he's a human being with his own set of ideas, just the same way I'm a human being with their own set of ideas. And I say that because frequently, especially this week, where I'm sharing things about my opinion, maybe not even my own statements, but I'm sort of reposting or sharing or commenting on articles on sort of the things about the topic of guns right now. And I'm getting pushback from people. And I don't want to have to tell a fan or a casual fan or fair weather fan to fuck off, but I will, because I'm still allowed to have my opinion on whatever the fuck I want, because I'm still a human being, and they don't want that, whether it's for, to their behest or not, because if I say I like bananas and they like apples, they're like, well, fuck, you're wrong, bro. Apples are way better. And I go, well, why don't you eat apples and I'll eat bananas and you leave me alone? Doesn't mean you can't like my band. It doesn't mean I'm an asshole. It doesn't mean you're an asshole. It just means you like apples and I like bananas. And too many people, depending on the topic, obviously, too many people want everyone else to only like one or the other. And it's very frustrating when people are going, I bought your CD and I came to your concert and I bought your t-shirt and you have to like apples because I said so. I don't like that. And I incorporate that, honestly, probably pretty much every fucking day. And especially whenever I open about anything, I think I've weeded out all the Pitbull type, detractors. But, I've encountered that too, where I'm just like, this is what I support and this is what I believe in and this is what I'm going to do. If you have an opinion on something, you're entitled to that, but you're wrong. But that's for you. That's your deal. And so again, I'm on my soapbox here, but I'm only about, so say again.
Oh, it's all about like just like spreading information, like getting like accurate pictures of what's going on. Like if it's about like like shootings in the US or just pit bulls in general, people becoming more aware of what things are actually like surrounding them, and like just giving an accurate picture of like a perception, whether it be like a public perception or hearsay on
perception is
given topic.
Incredibly important, because I enjoy respectful debate or conversation with someone who's maybe has an opposing view from me, obviously I'm going to leave the current gun issue alone, because you can't argue with a bunch of, in my opinion, you can't argue with a bunch of murdered children. But when someone says, oh, I don't like pit bulls, I'm capable of having a conversation, assuming that they are as well, and go, well, you know, let me give you some information. Let me tell you my experiences. Let me tell you, I send people to a website frequently called pitbullinfo.org. And it's a bunch of totally non-biased stats. That's basically just like a marker of like, if you love pit bulls, here's some information. If you don't love pit bulls, here's the same information. It's very non-biased, and it's all very sort of meticulous in the way it's laid out, as far as like having statements from, like I mentioned earlier, like the AKC and several other, substantial organizations regarding animal health and just stats and stuff and such. And it's been a really good base, a springboard for when I'm talking to someone who maybe is like, oh, I don't understand, or I'm afraid of these dogs, or I read this article that they're all, vicious. And I can go, well, here's some, here's a chart and a diagram, a pie chart, nice spreadsheet.
Actual
for you.
data.
Yeah. And so give some people some, factual information, and let them do with it from there what they want, And like I said, the guy I give guitar lessons to, and he's watching my dogs in the background. He says, oh, this seems so sweet. Normally, Mila, my main girl dog, would be sitting right here, staring up at me, waiting for me to pay attention to her. Doesn't have a mean bone in her body. So, but unless there's any other sort of bullet points you guys want to hit, I do got to get going soon, just because they still have.
Absolutely. We can wrap. So just really quick, just to kind of wrap up. Now you do have a tour coming up. And that starts June 1st, right? New York.
Next week. Yeah, we fly out on Tuesday and start this 2-month tour all across most of the continental US. There'll be some of the places we're missing on this tour we will get to on the next run. Obviously we're not going to go on tour for 8 months consecutively, but we've got a solid 2 months in front of us, with a couple breaks where I get to come home for 2 or 3 or 4 days at a time, which is good for me,
nice.
For my sanity. But so looking forward to that. It's going to be us and Tom Kiefer of Cinderella, the singer of Cinderella. It's not a band anymore now, but them, us, and then Faster Pussycat opening, my old band. And busy with that. Like I said, we're working on a new record. Should be out within the year, I would say, and couple other projects as well, so keeping busy.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much again. Just to kind of sum up, we are raising money for Stand Up for Pits, and we are wrapping up this live stream. But first of all, thank you so much
Thank you
for donating your time. And as I said before, this link is going to be good for another week, so if you're watching this like 2 days from now, you can still donate. So
Yep, definitely.
Yeah, please do. Yeah. And if you've already donated, thank you again so much. And if you've watched for the last 2.5 hours, thank you for
thanks for hanging out with us.
For giving me your time.
I guess.
Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for having me.
And, thank you so much.
Yeah, and I'll talk to you guys soon.